Good day everyone, so it's been quite a while since Shenhe's release and I think it's worthwhile just revisiting the character. Now there is a very good video by Jamie KB9V on YouTube that sort of shows you how you can play Shenhe in a meta team composition. He shows you the calculations, the builds, and all of this is F2P accessible. Very good video summarizing the strengths of Shenhe. I really recommend watching this and giving it a like if you haven't done so already. But one of the important things that he does is actually break down why Shenhe is so good, and I just want to sort of quickly reiterate something that he said right here in the beginning, so just listen carefully.
Focused on buffing Ayaka, it means the more invested your Ayaka is, the more value you get out of Shenhe.
Now, this sentiment is something that I sort of shared 10 months ago, like here at the 6th of January, where I sort of looked at Shenhe's exponentially ramping nature, and basically this is what I said at the time. Exponential nature means that the better your team is, the better she becomes. Now, at the time when I made that video way back when, a lot of the focus, especially in the community, was just on the icy quills, but Shenhe has a lot more going for her, so I'll summarize this on screen. So as you guys can see, it's not just the icy quills, but at point number 2, you have a universal, normal, elemental, and sort of burst bonus percentage that gets added to any character on your team, and obviously this depends on whether you tap or hold E with Shenhe. Both of these separate bonuses can coexist if you've got, of course, C1. Shenhe herself shreds the enemy's cryo resistance with her elemental burst. She's got a very long AoE off-field cryo application with her elemental burst, and this is something that also benefits from her own icy quills. And this is just also to add to what Jamie said in his video, where the Favonius lance is such a good weapon. If you have a bunch of enemies grouped up, especially this is very common in AoE free sort of setups in the Spiral Abyss, then even if you are running like Shenhe with, let's say, 20 or 30% crit rate because of artifacts, the fact that you have 5 or 6 enemies around you that are getting hit by Shenhe's sort of elemental burst means that you can proc your Favonius with almost 100% certainty once Shenhe is on the field, of course. So when you really are struggling for energy, just swap to your Shenhe, and if there are a lot of enemies that are being hit in this wide AoE, you just get that Favonius energy, and of course this can funnel back into Shenhe, or you can trigger it and then swap to another character. There are really many ways of playing with this, and of course the fifth point here, the rapid positioning. So one of the cool things about her E ability is that it allows you to get to certain enemies or to certain critical points on the field, especially if you're an Kazuha like me and you're playing with Sucrose. And this is just so cool because you don't need to waste stamina or time to get to that part. Of course, this also feeds into point 4. If you are afraid of having Shenhe pick up your Favonius particles, you can position away and then swap to another character, and the particles will almost try to catch up to you, and then your other character sort of gets it. Going on to sort of point 6 here, yes, Shenhe is a valuable carrier for a noblesse set. She can buff your entire team because building her is pretty much artifact agnostic when it comes to releasing her full potential. I do think that people overvalue the Shimenawa and Gladiator sort of set, like getting the double attack bonus on Shenhe, because that's just going to add to your icy quill. But if you carry noblesse, well, you can give that buff to the whole team, which in combination with the other buffs and how the sort of damage equation in Genshin Impact multiplies out all of these buffs multiplicatively, I think it's just better overall. The guys can do obviously the maths and so on, but being able to build her in this way is certainly a very strong plus point. And certainly from the runs, if you looked at Jamie's videos and his previous super fast clearing times with an F2P sort of Ayaka Shenhe team, I think the Noblesse set is kind of really good. And then obviously the final sort of point here is, and this is the point we made in the beginning of the video, building her is something that you do up to a point, and then from there on her contribution scales with the rest of the team's investments. And of course this is valid for a C0 to C3 Shenhe. From C4 and onwards, there is certain ways you can leverage additional damage from her with the Skyfrost mantra stacks and all of those things, but that's an entirely separate video. So yeah, I mean, on the surface of it, Shenhe provides quite a lot. It's pretty good for a character. And I suppose the question now is, well, what happens when we take away Ayaka? We take away Ganyu, we take away, let's say, potentially Kaya, or any other future potential cryo DPS characters. Can we take Shenhe out of her niche and still get some value if we don't use her icy coils? Now I know this might raise eyebrows, but this is not from the perspective of hardcore meta. This is from the perspective of, ooh, I like Shenhe, I got the character, I don't have all of the characters that's recommended, but I just want to play with her, and can we make it work? And the answer is, of course, yes. Alright, so here are the builds on the screen. Of course, the Favonius Lance, a couple of artifacts. I'm not using the Noblesse set whatsoever, but you should probably be doing it. Low crit rate. This is just an example, a demo, so don't worry too much about it. Of course, Kokomi with a R2 prototype Amber. We're going to be trying to do clam or physical clam Kokomi. I think it's going to be so much fun. And of course, I'll try and play in a way without using her C1, so it's just going to be N2 dash, N2 dash, sort of all the way. So this constellation should not really matter. Here's my little official, stringless, whatever, bunch of random artifacts, talents, meh, and of course Sucrose being just Sucrose. So this is more or less the team that I'm going to run, and the question is, can we get decent enough clearing times that such that if you had to do the same thing, would you have enough time for your other team on the second half to clear the Spiral Abyss? So this is what we'll try to do. And of course, here in the background, you can just sort of see a quick demonstration where we can trigger the sort of Favonius passive roughly about every 6 or so seconds. And yeah, it is pretty free if you sort of look at it. So without expending too much effort, without going overboard with animation cancels or anything, just playing in a very simple way, how can this sort of team do? Well, like I promised, that AoE sort of off-field application of freeze is just so good. And of course with Fischl here as well, we can shred a lot of the enemies' physical resistance because we can trigger Superconduct, and Shenhe herself shreds the physical resistance, so pretty nice. And this allows our Kokomi, you can see here the N2 dash cancels, this allows our Kokomi to sort of heal and then obviously trigger a lot of like bubble damage. You can see a 36k and so on. Typically your Ocean Youth Clan damage is capped at about 27k, but when you shred resistance, it obviously goes higher. And one of the cool things that you might have noticed is how even the damage is that we're doing to these Kairagi. So both of their health bars are very, like you can see, they're very close. So the chances that the one will just go and power up and regain some health is like pretty low. And yeah, so that's the first chamber. I think the time is more than acceptable. Anything within a minute for that chamber gives you more than 2 minutes for the second chamber, which if you've seen my F2P videos is more than enough time to obviously clear it. Here we are just going to freeze the enemies and once again try to use Kokomi and the Ocean Youth Clan set. Of course the enemies have a very high resistance to physical damage, but with Shenhe and of course the Superconduct, this is not a problem, and this allows us to use Kokomi on field to do a bit of moderate damage, and then of course the Ocean Youth Clan bringing up the bulk of the AoE damage for us. Yeah, this is pretty relaxed. You can see here I'm deliberately making mistakes, by the way, in the background. So like getting hit, sort of waltzing around, doing whatever. This is how you would pretty much play if you just want to get the Primogems and get out. So yeah, this is what we're doing. And I do feel that the clearing times, as you'll see, will be precisely sort of 8:45 on a dot, so it's 1 minute 15, is more than enough for most F2P players and teams to be able to beat Mago Kenki. It's sort of the standard that I've sort of set to myself. If you can do it within 1 minute 15 on a Mago Kenki floor, you should have enough leeway to beat him. And of course, here's the final floor. Once again, I'm just going to play in sort of a relaxed way. I'm going to take a hit with Kokomi, not iframe it, group up the enemies, miss out on the Superconduct, let the Superconduct expire so we don't get the full benefit. You guys can see there's a lot you can improve on in terms of how to play, and yet you'll see, I think the clearing time was 9 something. We'll still have more than 2 minutes for the final boss. So as an F2P player, you can still beat the final boss with more than enough time on the clock. I've shown this also in previous videos and so on. But the big point here is, yeah, without Ayaka, without any other sort of teams at the highest difficulty of the game or the most difficult content, Shenhe is still useful, and this just speaks volumes to all of her strengths. Cheers.